everyone should go to migrate to YouTube. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Welcome everybody to the Sufina Society Nothing But Facts live stream on a very special day in which we have a special guest. And that is, of course, Shaykh Amin Kholwadia of Chicago, founder of Darul Qasim College, and truly one of the elders and one of the seniors now in the United States and in the Western Hemisphere, a leader in knowledge, a respected scholar, and somebody that I think everybody who is involved in dawah, in knowledge, in scholarship, should be looking up to as somebody who's built an institution and established a credible path of knowledge for a lot of brothers. I'm sitting here with some brothers who are headed to Darul Qasim, and some brothers who have already been to Darul Qasim. So we know a lot about Darul Qasim. Maybe some of our viewers out there are not familiar with Darul Qasim. So let's begin with a little bit of a bio and a background. But first, we'd like to welcome Shaykh Amin. Shaykh Amin, welcome to the Sufina Society podcast.
Assalamu alaikum wa
rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shaykh Amin is originally from the subcontinent and traveled and studied there extensively before moving to England. He studied the classical manhaj of Hanafi fiqh and Maturidi Aqidah, and he studied the Arabic language, of course, studied hadith, and studied all of the sciences that any scholar would be expected to have studied. Yet he excelled, and around by the age of 22 and 23, he was excelling past his peers and completing the curriculum. Sheikh, before we get to your shift to England, I want to ask you about something that's mentioned here in your biography regarding the theosophical initiation into the Akbarian school. This may be terminology that some people are not aware of. And so if you can kindly inform us, what exactly does that mean? What exactly does it mean, the theosophical initiation, and what is exactly the Akbarian school?
Yeah, the Akbarian school is named after Shaykh Akbar, Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi. He has his own methodology in understanding the asma and sifat and wujud, and he has his own tariqah of dhikr and exercises, meditation, etc. So that's the school. And the theosophy is, when you adopt the school in the sense that you want to worship Allah in a good way, in a better way. And that is where I think the focus of the Salik is in ibadah and drawing closer to Allah. The Salik's focus is always Allah. The Salik is not at all worried about the mundane affairs of the world. His passion is to serve Allah, please Allah, worship Allah, and then infuse it in his daily life. So that's what we mean by the theosophy. Yeah.
Is it a spiritual practice, or is it a branch of Aqidah?
It's both. There's a lot of post-Kalam Aqidah there, and it's post-Kalam. He doesn't really care too much for the Kalami, dialectics, but he does care for the Aqidah you have of Allah. Who is Allah? How does he operate, etc. So it is a lot of post-Aqidah or post-Kalam Aqidah. And there are some adhkar there, a lot of du'as, ahzab, that adhkar that he prescribes in his tariqah. It's mainly an offshoot of the Qadiriyah silsila, but it's distinct in terms of his understanding of Allah, Allah's names and sifat, and that's what the Sadiq does. He understands Allah and goes into a discussion of Allah, how you see Allah, how does Allah manifest himself, and so on. So it's quite comprehensive.
Do the traditional Ashari or Maturidi scholars do they take issue with any ideas in the Akbarian school? And if so, what are some of their points of conflict?
I mean, some of them are very vicious against the Shaykh. They don't like him. Some of them condemn him as a kafir. But that's fine, everybody to his own, I guess.
Is it because of furu'i issues or usuli issues?
One or two usuli issues is about wujud, is about existence, who exists. And so, Ibn Arabi, through his very articulate, expression of existence, he comes to a maqam, a station where only Allah exists and nothing else. So it's a spiritual state. The people who are kalami, and don't get me wrong, I love the kalam tradition, we teach it here. They seem to miss the boat. He's not talking to the mutakallim.
Yeah.
He's talking to the salik. It's a different language, it's a different code, it's a different science. So that's where people get confused, because in so many places, he does say that Allah is separate from his creation. There's no, what do you call it, hulul, there's no incarnation. He said they are separate. Al-haqqu haqqun, wa in nazal wal khalqu khalqun, wa in ala. It doesn't matter how low Allah comes, he's still the haqq. It doesn't matter how high the khalq goes up, it is still khalq. He makes that very clear, and people are confused because they seem to read all of his works in the Kalami tradition. And we, maybe people who study Ibn Arabi, we know he's not talking to the mutakallim. He's talking specifically to the person who has entered into suluk, and he's talking to them in their language. So you have to separate the two languages. If you don't, you'll be confused, and definitely you end up saying, oh, maybe he's just a heretic, and so on. So we can't really condemn people who don't understand him, except that they're lazy. They don't want to learn the language of the Shaykh. Basically, that's the bottom line. But we're okay. We're okay with that. Yeah.
Tell me about the discussion on his manuscripts and the transmission of his manuscripts, and if those manuscripts have any deaths or alteration, whether it be accidental or intentional. Some people speak about his stepson as somebody who had added and subtracted from his stepfather's, from Ibn Arabi's manuscripts. So could you talk to us a little bit about that? And that, I mean, sometimes it's an accusation, but sometimes also more of an explaining away some of the problematic statements that ulama find in those manuscripts.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good insight, whether or not, because in those days they were manuscripts written by hand and ink. It was very easy when you transcribe to miss a word, miss a phrase, or even rephrase some phrases, which would be, as you say, an interpretation. Anything else, a tahrif. The idea that in certain places is being, messed with, matsus. I don't buy that. I think that's a cop-out. I think you should explain what the man is saying. Don't run away from it. In terms of academic integrity and honesty. If you disagree, just say you disagree. Don't hide the fact that he said it. And that will be their true scholarship. So there are places that certain people say in fusus is matsus, altered and changed. But I think you take it on face value, and you explain it through his methodology, through his philosophy. Then you're okay. So you're not running away from a problem. You're trying to explain what the Shaykh actually means. Once you explain it, then it's not a problem. But there might be certain places, definitely, where alterations were common in those days. Now, even with the printing press, there were so many mistakes the printing press made, as you know. They had printed a whole set of Quran, the Turks. They're all wrong. Every page has mistakes.
Subhanallah, of the Quran.
Of the Quran itself. So they had to get in Egypt, they noticed that the Quran copy, after the printing press was invented, they had to go by hand and write over the
Ajib.
muharraf words.
Subhanallah.
It was now the testimony to the hifz and the memory of those scholars that there's no, it's wrong, it's wrong. It doesn't measure up to the oral standard.
Subhanallah.
So
Subhanallah.
it was quite common for people to, miswrite, mistranscribe. But on the whole, we know what his positions are on the whole. So we would know whether this is, distorted or not.
Let's then, if it being the case that his works have been transmitted accurately, more or less accurately, without much tadsis or alteration, let me ask about a specific far'i issue, and that is his statement, or let me say the statement that Ahlun Nar will eventually experience a bliss of their fire. Is that an accurate understanding of his statement, and how do the scholars understand this?
It is 99% accurate, but he says that occasionally they will be, brought out from the alam, the pain, and they will taste a certain ladda and aduba. He calls it aduba from the word adab, sweetness. Then they'll go back to the pain. And that is for the purpose of understanding how do people survive in eternity with this amount of pain. So he wants to give it a kind of justification by saying that there are people in the world who are masochists. They enjoy pain. So he says Ahlun Nar, they're basically masochists. So for a brief moment, a temporary relief will be that they enjoy the punishment. But he doesn't say that they'll exit the fire.
Yes.
Nor does he say that the fire will be extinguished. He says, "Khalidina fiha abada," and that's as far as the nas goes. And you can't question him for that.
Yeah.
He does say they'll live there forever. What he says is that if you want to understand the process of acclimatization, how do you acclimatize yourself in the fire and you remain there forever? So that's what he's trying to do. But he does make that statement, but it's not permanent. I mean, maybe it might be a few moments, a few seconds, and then this happens, and then they go back to feeling the pain.
So it's like he's
obviously the literal semantics of hermeneutics of liyadhuqul adab. So they may taste the adab, and adab is from udba.
Yeah.
So he makes that hermeneutical kind of connection. And that's a ta'wil which may be not in line with the Ahlul Sunnah, at least the majority of them, but it's in line with the words, it's in line with the hermeneutics. And the Aqidah doesn't change. He says they're there forever. Yeah.
So in that case, it's a speculation on his part on how is it that someone will or can survive that long in that much pain, more so than it is as you said earlier, a statement of doctrine, just a speculation on how someone would survive that long. Okay, and as he says that they're not going to be experiencing bliss as a state, as a normal state, nor will they be outside of the fire. So in that respect, there's no negation of any of the major elements of, or the known ma'ruf elements of Aqidah in that.
Yeah, definitely not. I think, for those who might want to justify their permanent, existence in the fire, it might help them. Yeah, it might just help them. So there are many animals who enjoy pain, and they live in filth.
SubhanAllah.
Many animals in the world, they live and survive, they're born in filth.
SubhanAllah. Well, we know that people in this life may be addicts, or maybe otherwise, are actually choosing actions that result in pain willingly, with their own free will. Self-destructive behavior is something that people do engage in. Maybe
if you go with his major philosophy, that they actually choose, their way of life, they choose their lifestyle. It is through their own volition that they want to be like this.
Yeah.
The Quran mentions that وَلَوْ رُدُّوا لَعَادُوا بِمَا نُهُوا عَنْهُ. That if they were returned, these people who are in Jahannam, they would do exactly the same thing. They repeat their lifestyle and their lives. Yeah. So it's not totally, what do you call it, heretical, but there's a sense of a common sense there, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's take a drastic shift, because in England, you studied a completely different mazaj science or study, which is Islamic finance. Right now we shift from matters of the heart and of mysticism to the nitty gritty of dollars and cents and dinars and dirhams. Could you speak a bit about your research into Islamic finance? What exactly were you examining, and if anything came out of it in terms of a product in the marketplace?
Well, I was part of a group that were writing, a book on Islamic finance, what it is, what it could be. So that's how that book came about. I was now assigned the first chapter in that book, and we got to know and learn from each other about Islamic finance and the transactions, the musharaka, mudaraba, what have you. Okay? So there, I think the thrust was on examining the English system and comparing it to a kind of suggested Islamic system and trying to, get the best out of both worlds, if there is such a thing. And that was, through the studies in fiqh. We had studied zakat quite comprehensively, alhamdulillah, and there are a lot of, in Hidayah, you have Kitab al-Buyur, you have Kitab al-Ijara, and all of those wonderful books in fiqh that we have. And then on top of that, you have this, what do you call it, trying to, plug in a square pin into a round hole, which the tracks are different. So our conclusion is that you really can't merge the two, because the Western track is very different from the Muslim track. The gauge is very different. The train and the compartment won't fit on those tracks. So you have to redo all the tracks. So what we were trying to do is trying to help Muslims understand that the basic knowledge that we have of Islamic transactions, this is it. Now, I don't know what happened in terms of, it was used in colleges in England, the book, to teach people an introduction to Islamic finance and so on. But at the same time, we kind of moved on from that, and we do other things here in this country, and trying to be more creative. You can't put an Islamic label on a Western instrument.
Yeah.
That's just false.
Yeah.
So we disagree with that approach, and there are other approaches we have in terms of trying to understand the difference between Darul-Harb and Darul-Islam, which I thought was such a genius, understanding of the Hanafis, especially. Imam Abu Hanifa came up with it, and his students, and they took that and said there is a difference in where you live. So Islamic transactions, are they part of your fard ayn, or is it basically up to the wali and the hakim, how he rules and governs, because he has the wilaya authority to tell people this is wrong, this is dhulm, you owe him this, you owe him that. But in Europe, in the UK and the US, where if you have a dispute about an Islamic transaction, you can't take that to the judge in the US.
Yeah.
He doesn't know anything about Islamic transactions. So you're compromising yourself, and you are the loss, because you'll have to go with the law of the land if he says this. Now the law of the land may be very contradictory to Islamic law.
Yeah.
So it becomes very very confusing for the consumer. So that's why there's a new theory, well, not a new theory, an old theory which needs to be revived, and say we must acknowledge in theory that the two systems are very different. Are they compatible? A few of the moral, yeah, I think ideas, they're compatible and they overlap, but how do you regulate this transaction and this transaction? That needs a new system, a system of Islamic finance in Darul-Harb, basically. So that's what we're trying to create now at Darul Qasim.
When you mentioned Darul Harb in the Hanafi tradition and definition, can you give us the criterion of a land being called Darul Harb? Many people imagine, based upon the terminology, that there actually is a battle taking place. So does that translate in the Hanafian framework?
Yeah, that's a very naive translation, and people, because they don't know the terminologies of fiqh, they translate everything literally. It's very naive, very, very amateurish. It means nothing like that. It's a very simple idea, and that is that in a land where Islamic law cannot be implemented willingly, and that is Darul Harb. Yeah,
simple as that.
The contest is just between whether the law of the land is supreme or the law of Islam is supreme. Where the law of Islam is compromised and the law of the land is now supreme, that's Darul Harb. That's our definition.
Okay.
Nothing to do with warfare.
No. So now when people ask about buying homes these days, there are some products out there in the marketplace where the contract on its face is a murabaha contract, which is basically the organization comes in, buys the house in cash, sells it to you at a profit, and you could buy it out over time. So it has three parts. It's not a money lending contract, but it's buyers and money for a product. So on its face, it's a valid contract. And of course, as we know, within a few months, that contract itself will be sold, bundled up, and sold by the purported Islamic mortgage company in an unlawful sale of a whole bunch of debts to another company. You then get a letter in the mail saying that you're paying ABC mortgage company this much money, and here is the interest. Okay. So I tell people that you're not responsible for what they do with the contract afterwards. You're responsible for what you purchased and what you signed. And that sort of gets a Muslim over a hurdle, and at least he's signed a contract that was valid. What they did with it was their issue. But so setting aside the pragmatics and the day-to-day life of a regular Muslim who wants to buy a house, at a higher level, it seems to me that you are completely unsatisfied with the way that Muslims have tackled or developed a response within the contemporary modern framework of a debt-based economy and an interest-based economy. Now, you also said that you're working at solutions to this at Darul Qasim. Can you share some of the foundational principles of that solution, and how would it trickle down pragmatically into the everyday life of a Muslim?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. Why is it $1 trillion industry?
Yeah. It's everything. It's the whole. Yeah.
You get me $1 trillion, I'll answer.
Yeah. So.
On the whole, yeah, we respect Muslims' emotions that they want to do everything halal. That's, mashallah, a great value, that you want to stay away from sin. We don't discount their ideas or their intentions and their emotions. We say, this is wonderful. This should be the way that we believe and the way we feel. There's no doubt in that. You want to اجتنبوا ظاهر الإثم وباطنه, right? And stay away from sin at every level. The issue is, it's a transaction, and then there's another transaction. So your transaction facilitates the second transaction, which is you've been underwritten by Fannie Mae or something, right?
Yep.
It does facilitate it. And the Quran says, "Ta'awanu 'ala al-birri wa taqwa," that you should cooperate with virtue and taqwa and don't cooperate in sin. So is there cooperation there? So on surface value, there is. In terms of just very legal terms, in terms of writing the contract, there isn't. So it will absolve you because you're no longer responsible for whatever they do with your money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a separate transaction.
Yeah.
So that much makes sense, that you could do that, but at the end of the day, my biggest concern is it consumer friendly?
Mm-hmm.
When you offer somebody a product, there has to be a satisfaction with the product. This is America. Consumer is always right. So what I would want people to do is find maybe a better way, a more refined way to bring the product into the market and have a bit more consumer satisfaction, reviewed, researched, and then taken into account. And then obviously the rates that the halal industry charges to the consumer, they're kind of exorbitant,
Mm-hmm.
which is another common complaint that people have. So we're trying to find out through the classical scholars, which I said that there's not a new ruling, it's an old ruling, which makes perfect legal sense because it's coherent. And that is based on an example. Let's give you an example that we have an Islamic law of qisas.
Mm-hmm.
Can we execute qisas here in this country by ourselves?
We can't.
No. Why? Because it's the government's prerogative. If they want capital punishment and they want to execute someone, they have the constitutional prerogative to do what they want to do if the state allows it. Or maybe the feds want to do something. If the federal government allows it, then they have their prerogative, legal prerogative. We, as Muslims, can't say that the Quran wants us to execute qisas, albeit it's a penal code. Doesn't matter which code it belongs to. So in that case, our scholars would all agree that qisas is exempt for Muslims in this country.
Mm-hmm.
No scholar will say that you take him back to Darul Islam and execute him.
Correct. Yep.
No one will say that.
Correct. Yeah.
So every scholar is forced to say that in the matter of executing, implementing qisas, Muslims are forgiven and exonerated from that hukum.
Correct.
So that's one example where Darul Kufr makes a difference in the hukum.
Correct. Yep.
Now let's apply this to other ahkam. Maybe does it apply to zabiha? No, because we don't need government prerogative to do zabiha.
Yes.
Does it apply to nikah? No, because we don't need government intervention to do that.
Correct.
Would it apply to divorce? Maybe. In some cases, yes, some cases, no. So what do we do about those areas in divorce where we cannot implement Islamic law? You're going to have to be creative and think of a theory which is consistent with the theory of qisas, that we will be exempt. And most scholars say, no, we're not exempt from applying the divorce laws in this country either, which will follow the law as much as we can. But, again, we're still exploring because it becomes a huge, huge problem for Muslim divorced women who are left bereft. And they don't have too much to go on if you implement the Islamic Sharia law. Now, this is a contingency, maybe it's a musibah, maybe you have to be patient, whatever it is that you want to call it, but at the end of the day, there are Muslims who are suffering, and they don't seem to like the idea of implementing Islamic divorce laws. So there again, what do the scholars say? And how do we overcome those problems? Because we have to fix the problem. We have to help Muslims. Right?
Yes.
Not about Islamic law, it's about helping the destitute woman on the street. What are you going to do for her? Some people say that the society, communities, Look where that's got us, mashallah. Past 40 years,
Yeah.
Muslim community does diddly squat for anyone. You know. So that doesn't work because you can't mandate that on the Muslim community. So the parents or the brothers and sisters have to, if the lady, she's divorced and she's a convert, she has no father, no mother, she has no brother or sister, she has no relatives that are Muslim. Why would they do anything for her?
Mm-hmm.
And so on. So there's a whole bunch of questions. I'm not suggesting for a moment that you change the Islamic law.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not subscribing to that. I'm saying that you need to find a consistent theory which helps and benefits Muslims who sometimes are compromised. And so that's another area where you might find that Islamic law is not going to be implementable 100%. It might be implementable 90% or 95%, but that still gives you, some room to think about legally how you're going to think about this. And then obviously you can extend it to other rules, other ahkam in Islam, like, riba. So is riba something where Muslims will be exempt in a non-Muslim land from, saying, okay, riba definitely is wrong. The theory of riba versus the hukum of riba, they're very different. So we subscribe to the idea that yamhaqullah riba wa yurbi sadaqat at a universal level, where no doubt the idea of taking money because you're lending money is atrocious. Yeah, it is almost inhuman. So we agree with that, all of that. But here's a contingency. Now the contingency is that what level and what amount of Islam can I practice in Darul Harb? So the Usuliyun, some of them, if not most of them, say we're not allowed to live in Darul Harb indefinitely. That's the answer. Which seems to be reasonable because you're supposed to practice Islam completely.
Yes. No.
Right? Okay, so what do you do now with all these 7, 8, 9, 10 million Muslims in the USA? What do you do? Where do you ship them to?
Yeah.
And wherever you ship them to, there's no Islam there either.
It's true. Yeah.
Right? So it's a catch-22. What I'm calling the ulama and scholars to think about are the ramifications and the repercussions of forcing the issue and saying that these still remain haram, which they do if you can ascertain it is a, what do you call it, an executive decision made by the muftis of Darul Islam, the muftis of this country. We do need a solution. We don't have a solution. It's very, very frustrating.
Yes.
So we are challenged. The ulama were challenged, and there are some issues there where Abu Hanifa actually says that la riba bayn al-Muslim wal-Arabi fi dar al-Harb. It's a hadith that he has from Makhul, says no doubt a mursal hadith, but he's come to a theory, and this is my case, that in academia, in terms of developing a legal theory, you have to be consistent and coherent. Otherwise, it's not a theory. And the legal jurists, the mujtahidun, they're legal theorists. And they think at the level of theory and then implement it. So if the theory is coherent, consistent, then you can do this and it will be valid. And I believe that it seems that Abu Hanifa's theory that it actually is not riba. So he's not legalizing riba. He's saying it's not riba in the first place. You understand?
Yes.
He's not saying it's halal or haram. He's saying there's no hukum on it. It's a transaction that is not seen as a transaction in Darul Islam, in Darul Kufr. So that's where some people will go to him, Abu Hanifa, and I think some other ulama like Qardawi and Shaykh Ali Jum'a, 2 or 3 ulama from the subcontinent and Turkey, most of them, they all subscribe to this idea that Abu Hanifa's opinion would be the best option for Muslims in the West.
And that is in taking and giving.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the way forward with these matters always begins at the level of what you said is a coherent theory. that gets a buy-in from the scholarly class or the intellectual class enough to inform policies of organizations, companies, etc., and then something trickles down and it becomes a reality of life.
Yeah.
This is a great way to enter now into another discussion on your think tank, which is, I would say it's partially a think tank and partially a college, right? Darul Qasim, it's a place where these ideas are being examined and these ideas are being fleshed out. And so let's now go from that to the discussion on Darul Qasim. And you founded it in 1998 with only a few students. And now you have a full-fledged school, which offers I would say, a master's right now.
We're getting there. We've applied for master's accreditation, but we do have a license to run as a college.
And the building here is quite impressive. It looks like an entire campus. The build. I've never been to Darul Qasim, so I don't know where the classes take place. But it looks here that you have. This looks to me as if it's a big campus. So did you acquire it?
That's our new building. We haven't moved into it yet. We will soon.
Inshallah.
Within the next month, we'll be moving into it, inshallah. Yeah.
Was it a former college?
It was. It was a purpose-built college.
Yes.
It was, a satellite campus for Northern Illinois University.
Okay.
And they were operating from there for many years, but because of COVID, they had to close down and they had to quickly sell the building. So we now we purchased the building.
Okay, that's wonderful. That's excellent. So now, are you headed towards full accreditation?
Yes, in terms of being able to offer a master's in Islamic law, Islamic theology.
Okay. And let's talk about that discussion, because a lot of people in the field, they tend to have, there's two ways to go about it. In the Arabic world, they call these Ma'ahid Ahliya, which is like just a local education institute that is not accredited by any accreditation organization. And then you have the official Jami'ats, the official colleges that are accredited. So what are the pros and cons of both? Let's start with the local institutes. Let's say down the road from you, you have Darus-Salam, which I would say is it's an institute. They're not seeking accreditation. So what are the pros and cons of getting accredited or not getting accredited?
The pros are you can operate as a martial madrasa, you can operate as a seminary, and people don't need to be at a certain standard, and you can graduate people the way you see fit. Mm-hmm. And it does interest people who want to follow the oral tradition. Mm-hmm. And you get many more subscribers, I think, from the community to that model. Mm-hmm. And it works. I mean, it's the model we had in, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. It was basically ahli, as you say, the local communities, and you can produce, good ulama, good scholars from there. What it doesn't allow you to do, which a licensed college allows, that's I wouldn't say it's a negative, but it does require you to do a few more things. As a college, if we wrote an article as a college in the US, and then it will be accessed by almost everybody in the US, mm-hmm. in academia, because now you're a college, you have the title of a college. I write an article on Qisas, and everybody in the US academic system will be able to see it at least and read it. Whereas you could not do that with a madrasa article. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't have that credibility in mainstream. So that's one of the reasons we went after this, that we wanted to be exposed in mainstream, which is one of the purposes of Darul Qasim, which we can talk about if you want. And the cons is that you might get students who come just for the degree and not for the knowledge. Mm-hmm. So that's a trade-off, basically.
That sounds like it covers everything. But I want to ask about the devotional element. A lot of times the non-accredited schools, they place a lot of emphasis on the devotional side of the deen. In other words, they have a lot of sessions of dua and ibadah and these types of things, holding that the accredited schools tend to not have that aspect. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, I mean, it could be true. It depends on the program you run. Even as an accredited school, we have, complete prerogative to do what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you want people to be just devoted and read some Nawafil or du'as or ahzab, I mean, that's really up to us, what we want to do. But here's the thing. I think the primary concern for a student of knowledge, a talib al-ilm, should be ilm.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
If he does nafil instead of studying, then that's from the shaitan.
Subhanallah.
Ulama of Deoband always said that you should not study, you should not be doing dhikr when you're supposed to be studying.
Subhanallah.
And that was their taqwa. And the ulama of Deoband, mashallah, they were scholars, they were academics, some of them were geniuses, but they also had their own individual regiment of ibadat and dua and something. So we want to allow our students to decide for themselves which way they want to go. So we're not going to force the issue. The fara'id are fara'id, they're going to do them anyway.
Yeah.
And the nawafil we do encourage, no doubt, and we do have sessions for them, no doubt, but it's up to the individual. Now you're fighting, you have to remember, what's the backdrop here?
Mm-hmm.
The backdrop is the US, where there's nothing except atheism, agnosticism. There's nothing except, there's, what's it called? Post deconstructionism, where it's just a feeling.
Yeah.
It's just a feeling. There are no rules, no boundaries. So we're housing those students. They are the context.
Yes.
I mean, they're not products of a madrasa that they come in all nice and polished and they have taqwa and they have this and that. They come in very raw.
Mm.
And if you want to, mashallah, give them some discipline, then you have to make sure that their focus is learning and they do the fara'id and they take care of themselves, they stay away from haram. That is, I think, enough taqwa.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is totally nafil. It is good, it is wonderful if you can do it, but not at the expense of scholarship. Yeah, the nafil should not replace scholarship. They should be more dedicated to knowledge and learning and teaching and debating than they are at this moment to doing the nawafil. So that's our model.
Okay, very good. And Darul Qasim right now is going to offer a master's, and right now you offer courses that go for about 4 years. Is that right?
That's at the intermediate level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and where we stop at a level which is implemented, by the way, by the Mughals. And then we have 2 year extra in hadith studies. We do Dora Hadith, and we have 1 year for the completion, which will be the master's year.
Okay, so that's up to 7 years.
Up to 7 years.
Program. Okay, and that is full-time or part-time?
That's full-time.
Full-time, mashallah. Now, when we talk about knowledge and scholarship, every nation has, every Muslim nation has a mufti and has a Darul Ifta. Non-Muslim nations also, or Muslims in non-Muslim nations also need and have developed fatwa councils. And it seems to me that the fatwa councils of every non-Muslim country, the ummah outside the Islamic countries, it seems to be whoever established it first, right? That's all the criterion was, that you established it and you called yourself the fatwa council first. So you have fatwa councils in England, in Europe, and in America that are in many respects almost modernist in their approaches, or that you could say it's a swimming usul, and not a set and defined usul. Could you talk to us about the need for fatwa councils, your assessment of current fatwa councils, their fatwa, or their, also more importantly, their methodology, and do we need a fatwa council that is rooted in the four madhahib and with a clear usul?
Well, Darul Qasim has Darul Ifta, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
We have a Darul Ifta where we have, 4 or 5 muftis sitting,
Mm-hmm.
answering questions that people ask, and it's running very well, mashallah, alhamdulillah.
Inshallah.
So there we don't have a problem with that methodology. It's very strictly Hanafi. Sometimes we do go outside the madhab if there's a very, very dire need.
Mm-hmm.
Our methodology is purely Hanafi, and we train our muftis that way.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the national fatwa councils, I think they could, obviously they need to know the full madhahib, but I'm saying, but when they say the four madhahib, they must have someone who is an expert in each madhab.
Yeah.
Not that they read books from other madhahib and then they incorporate it. No, there has to be a human being, like the Mamluks.
Mm-hmm.
The Mamluk system where they had qadis, they had a Hanafi qadi, a Shafi qadi, Maliki qadi, Hanbali qadi, and they were in one square, and you could go to any one of them if you were from that madhab. Something similar, akin to that, but I would want the council to be very robust in terms of its scholarship. That this one person who's a scholar in Maliki or Hanafi fiqh, they are genuine, they are qualified, and they do show a sense of taqwa themselves in their behavior, in their mannerisms, etc. So that would be something that I think would be useful for the US.
Yeah,
Substantial, but it's useful that there's a place where you have scholarship in action, and it's not just based on, this dead horse concept of the darura.
Yeah.
Everything's yajuz lil darura.
Yeah. Well, but we waited until it became a darura, right?
Yeah. But I say you can't use it as usul. That's not usul.
Yeah.
That's a cop-out, basically.
Yeah. And we've seen how recently, one of the first times that imams and scholars got together in mass and puts out a statement. Of course, I'm talking about the navigating different statement. Many said it was late, but nonetheless, it was one of the first times that you had so many du'at and scholars and imams sign off on something, and it had a tremendous impact, even when it was late. Nonetheless, it had a massive impact, and there's a lot of evidence for that impact. Okay, I'm still on their chat, and they're constantly posting articles citing their statement and how masajid have altered policies, organization have altered their policies based upon just that one, seeing all these names. They trusted the statement and they acted upon it. So there's a lot of power when that many imams come together. Now, this happened privately by one elder scholar going around and collecting maybe about 50 or 40 or 50 names, and then they opened it up after that. But don't you think that we need something like this that's almost like an official body that is producing such statements on matters of difference or on matters that should not have any differences of opinion within Islam, for the regular folk and for the masajid to rely upon? Don't we need something like that as a permanent body?
I mean,
a national body.
There definitely is a need, and the only question will be, from those who are not so pro-orthodoxy. People will complain that you're creating an orthodoxy which may not be in the best interest of American progressive Muslims. Who wants to subscribe to an orthodoxy when we have freedom of religion, freedom of thought, freedom whatsoever? So that's the only, I think, negative, if it is a negative, which I don't think it is, that you might face if you did propose such an idea. The issue there is what you said. You hit the right mark, and I think it must be an ijma'i issue. It must be an issue of ijma, where everybody agrees with the conclusion.
Correct.
Definitely, that should be the case where we have a group of ulama and say, if there's an ijma'i issue, then we will say it is ijma'i consensus, and that is the Muslim position. So that's fine. We can do that. Underneath ijma, there are so many speculative ideas. I wouldn't want this body to just say, okay, because we agree it is mustahsan, it is
Yeah.
what good for the community, and therefore we will endorse it or not endorse it, because I think that takes away fiqh.
So for all those listening, an ijma'i issue means regards a text from the Quran or a mutawatir hadith upon which there is no difference in its meaning and there is no room to have an opinion about it. Opinions regard the nusus that have speculation, or their transmission is up for discussion, the nature of its transmission. And so an ijma'i issue is something that no two Muslims can have a discussion about or debate. Now, let's move to the last subject of today's interview, and I thank you so much for your time. I know that you run a Mahad and a school and a college, and this takes a lot of time, so we're very thankful for that. The last subject is something else that you are an expert in, and that regards the spiritual science of dream interpretation. Can you tell us in what respect is dream interpretation a knowledge, and in what respect is it a gift that Allah gives to somebody? Are there thawabit or established principles in this field?
The dream interpretation, mashallah, it comes from the Quran. There are so many dreams in the Quran. Surah Yusuf, as you know, is very famous. In this story of Hudaybiyah, there's a mention of a dream of the Prophet ﷺ. There's the Udhiyah of Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ismail. So there are definitely landmarks, I think, in terms of knowledge. And the Prophet ﷺ's own sunnah was that he would ask people if they had any dreams after Fajr. If they did, then he would interpret them. And if they didn't, he would say, I had this dream, and he would interpret them. And sometimes Abu Bakr would come and say, may I interpret this dream for you? And the Prophet would say, yes, it's definitely a science. It's definitely a knowledge that needs to be revived. It's almost dead, but there are definitely rules and regulations that the Sahaba knew, and they handed it down mostly to Ibn Sirin. Ibn Sirin, as you know, Tabi'i, a great scholar, is the Imam of dream interpretation. And he had dictated many usul to his students. And then now, later on, the Mutakhirin came, and they've written books on the dawabit, the usul, the rules and regulations of dream interpretation. And they've categorized them according to the names of things, asma al-ashya, basically. So, you'll have the animal kingdom, you'll have the vegetable kingdom, you'll have the, land animals, sea animals, you'll have food, and you'll have clothing, and you have parts of the body, you have relatives, different types of relatives, mean this and that. And well, so it's very well organized in the latter scholars. They've kept it alive, and we should definitely keep it alive. And can it be studied? Yes, but you need a certain amount of malaka, dexterity in the Arabic language. You need to know the dreams of the Quran and Hadith. You need to know the stories of the Quran and Hadith. And you need the language. You need both the language of the context, you need the language of the Arabic. Yes. So many dreams has come out from the word in Arabic. Okay. So some rules, it develops through sohbah. You can't learn it in a college. You can, but you still need sohbah. You'd have to sit with somebody who does dream interpretation, and he'll give you the nuances.
Yes.
So in one entry for a dream, perhaps like milk, you might find 5 now applications. It can mean this, this, and that. So the alim who's with you will say, in this case, it means this. In this case, it's a lot of creativity there. And it does change people's lives. You give the wrong interpretation, God forbid, that guy's life is done. It's a big responsibility.
The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the dream is on the wing of a bird. If it falls, or if it is interpreted, it falls, means it happens. Does it mean if it is interpreted correctly, it will happen? Or does it mean any interpretation of it will happen?
Well, if it's a false interpretation, it won't happen.
Okay. So the ta'weed here, or the understanding here is that taqdir is that if it is interpreted correctly. إذا عبرت بتعبير صحيح.
Meaning, as much as possible. We don't require exactness, but if you're within the realm, within the target, then it'll happen.
Then it will happen. And what is the level of yaqeen? Let's take a hypothetical. A person has a dream. A veteran dream interpreter, or even 2 or 3. Some people, they take their dream to 2 and 3 and 4 interpreters to see where the tafsir lines up. First of all, the first question, is that a correct practice? And number 2, secondly, let us say in the hypothetical, they all interpret something, such as an event that would happen to the person. What level of certainty would that individual now have in that event occurring? Is it qat'i? Is it still dhanni? Is it certain, or is it still speculative, maybe? Do they have definite belief, or is it a maybe?
Yeah, I mean, the dream itself is dhanni, it is speculative. So he can't assume is wahi. It's not wahi.
Correct.
If he does assume is wahi, then that's a bid'ah. It's a sin. You can't do that. And the interpretation then is also dhanni. It's not qat'i. The interpreter may make a mistake, which is fine, and he'll be rewarded for the mistake he makes if he's qualified, basically. Thirdly, the amount of trust you must put in the interpretation is really up to you. It's individual. There's no orthodox statement which says you must believe in the interpretation, but it's really up to you. And fourthly, you have to make a choice based on your choice, not based on the interpretation.
So there's no amal upon it.
You're the mukallaf. Interpreter is not the mukallaf. You are responsible to do what you need to do. The guide, who is the interpreter, is just guiding you this way or this way. So you're still responsible for your action. And that is where I think many people make a mistake. They start blaming the dream and the interpreter.
Correct. And what about this concept of asking 3 and 4 and 5 to ensure that the meaning is sound and not one of them has not erred in his fatwa or in his interpretation?
Yeah, you're going dream interpretation hopping. Not a good practice.
Okay.
If you know somebody in the community, stick with that person, because it'll give you some consistency. The reason for that is that that person knows you.
Yes.
Yeah,
now, would we say then that the Prophet ﷺ called it 1/46 of the wahi? Would then we say that is a sliver of a wahi that is dhanni in nature? The dream is a type of wahi dhanni in nature?
It is 146 because
of nubuwah,
of nubuwah. Okay. And nubuwah, mashallah, as you know, if it is a hadith, which is part of nubuwah, hadith also can be, depending on its authenticity, be dhanni.
Ahad, such correct.
No.
Good.
So
it is fair to say, or accurate to say, that it is a type of ikhbaru min Allah, or wahi, not maybe, of course, not wahi as in revelation of the law, but it is of a dhanni nature, even if it is just like a mukashafa. All mukashafat will be categorized as dhanni in nature.
Always subject to interpretation.
Wonderful. Let's take one final thing, and that is, what is your wasiyah or counsel to a lot of the young students of knowledge out there who are watching this, who are trying to advance in their deen, a general wasiyah amma for us all?
You won't like my wasiyah. I'm very, very passionately Hanafi, so
okay.
I'll say become Hanafi and stick with it.
SubhanAllah. Well, some of us here are smiling, mashallah, mashallah.
Good. That's my only wasiyah, that Allah will pick the right madhab. You'll be happy, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah.
I'm just joking around. Well, I'm not, but I am. Study hard. Make sure that you have the adab of the kitab, adab of the place where you learn, adab of the shaykh you are with, even if you disagree with him. Make sure you maintain that adab. Don't become that Western that you don't like somebody if you disagree with somebody. You don't have license to hurt people. You don't have a license to hate people. Stay within that framework of the adab of ilm. So ilm has to come with hilm, which is tolerance.
Subhanallah.
Ilm and hilm, they come together. You can't separate the two. So the most important is adab.
Subhanallah.
Adabani Rabbi fa ahsanat ta'dibi, the Prophet said that my Lord taught me adab, and he did a great job in teaching me adab. So I think that's the most important, that you don't change your lifestyle, you don't change your paradigm, you don't change your attitude or your culture, assuming that since you are studying universities and doing this research, that you don't like the people who brought you here. You have to maintain that ta'alluq and connection with them. So that's very important at a social level. At an individual level, obviously, study as hard as you can, burn the midnight oil, make dua, do some dhikr, and make sure you have a role for tahajjud in your life. All of that which comes with ilm.
MashaAllah. Perfect.
And Allah give us all barakah, inshallah.
I mean, perfect. As the student of Abu Hanifa said, al-ilmu rahimun bayna ahlihi. So we ask Allah, knowledge is like almost a kinship relationship between its people. And since we're lovers of knowledge, we want to always be in the good graces and in constant connection with the elders in our community, also with the tulab and everybody who's connected to this subject. And we ask Allah Ta'ala to let us live and die on good terms and in good relations with all the people of knowledge involved in Ahl Sunnah and in da'wah and in teaching and in researching. So Jazakallah khairan so much for taking the time out. And hopefully next meeting will be in person in Chicago, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala.
Yeah, ahlan wa sahlan. You're more than welcome, inshallah.
And we'd love to host you. If you're ever on an East Coast trip or an East Coast tour, then please, we'll be ready to host you, inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Nashkurkum.
وإياكم جزاكم الله خيرا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. All right, everybody, that was the interview that we've been waiting for and had planned for some weeks now. And it's always really an honor and a blessing to be able to have one of the elders and one of the seniors and one of the scholars with us here on the program. And we really, as I said at the end, really, we want to live and die in good relations with the Muslims. And especially the khawas of the Muslims are Ahl al-Quran, which is sometimes assumed to be Ahl al-Ilm, right? Ahl al-Quran hum ahlullahi wa khassatuh. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the people of the Quran, they are the people of Allah and His specific, those drawn near. And the ulama have so many praises and virtues in the Quran, so that have no end to them. So let's now turn to comments and questions. Let's start with our, I'm not going to say studio audience, but close to that. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys here today. So what do you guys think? You have any comments or questions? Speechless. MashaAllah, yeah, it was, alhamdulillah. He has a very diverse background. You have here the Akbarian element, the dream interpretation element, Islamic finance element, institution building element. I mean, these things are across the board. MashaAllah. Your institution that you're headed to?
I'm still thinking.
Pumped? Alhamdulillah. There's a lot to take in. All right, what else? Let's see. Let's go straight to the Sharif Antoya wants to know who's in the studio. He's getting jealous. Because Sharif Antoya, he came here last summer. Wow, that was one summer ago that we had Sharif here. Sharif Antoyo is from Detroit. Chief Latif is from Atlanta. Okay, let's see. I think the guys in Chicago, they're pretty lucky. They got Darus-Salam, and really, literally just down the road is Darul Qasim. You could probably could you take a jog down there or ride a bike?
Yeah, it'd take like 7-10 minutes.
7-10 minutes if you took a bike? Yeah, subhanAllah. And Darus-Salam, it's transmission based and it's devotion based. That's the feeling I get when I'm there, right? And Darul Qasim is academic based. And as he said, they became they're going for the accreditation so that they could, when they put out something, it'll be read by the academics of the world. And Islam is always going to have, Muslims are going to be in every field. One of the signs is so like that Islam is, it's a truth, is that its people are everywhere, right? Its people are everywhere. You go to the musalla of any hospital and you have doctors walking in and you have cooks walking in and you have nurses walking in, and all the different categories of, I mean, now they have like 4 categories, not just nurse anymore. You used to have doctor and nurse. That was the whole hospital, right? Now it's like physician assistant. Now it's like, what else are the categories? There's nurse practitioner, as opposed to what? A nurse that's on strike, right? Nurse practitioner, registered nurse, the nurse that's not multazim, right? And one's practicing, one's not. Registered nurse, nurse practitioner, physician's assistant. What's the ranking here? PA is the top, right? And then you have, so then you have the hospitals. Then you have, there's so many different levels now, but you go into the musalla. First of all, these multi-faith chapels, just call them a musalla. Khalas. No one uses it except us, right? Every once in a while you see someone in there meditating, he's going through a phase. When you realize this stuff is nonsense, doesn't work, and really all he's doing is listening to soft music, right? They don't come anywhere. The place is just a musalla. There's nothing else.
Sometimes it's rocks.
Rocks? No, you remove them, right? And you, they have a chapel, the pulpit. Who has mass in a church? Do they actually have mass? Do they have a speech? The Christians give a speech on Sunday morning. Who's going to that, right? It's just there, right? It's just there because they imagine that it's Christian dominated. Now, practically speaking, there's rugs everywhere and masahif used, right? In other words, like someone read from this. You go ahead.
So you mentioned that thing about the devotional aspect, or about Nawafil.
Yes.
It's up to the student. So
Yeah.
what would your advice be for somebody who's...
Well, I was going to ask this question, but I never really got the chance to. Hold on, let me take this amazing sip of sugary cream. Muslim gives you a gift, you have to take it, diet or no diet. That's my excuse. I was going to say this. In a post-deconstructionist world, I didn't get a chance to ask this question, but it's all about feelings, right? So what is the cure? I think the cure to that is really what he said, 75%, in the sense of ilm. Ilm is what pins down. It's like it's a bolt that bolts it down into the concrete, so that you reach a point to say, I know I feel this, but knowledge is what makes you have that self-awareness that I'm feeling this, and it becomes a practice of a type of muraqabah, in a sense, that I'm feeling this. That's knowledge. That's a practice that you learn to do, right? I'm feeling this. Now, let's weigh the feeling and let's look at the causes. Firstly, let's weigh the feeling. Is this a feeling that's good in the Sharia, acceptable? Is Allah pleased with this or not? If I was to take this to a logical conclusion, that's knowledge. Number 3, what's the solution to this feeling? So why am I agitated today? I feel envy. Why do I feel, from whom do I feel envy? Oh, I feel insulted, or I feel envy. Okay, why? Oh, because so-and-so didn't give me attention. So-and-so did better. Okay, so now we assess that feeling. So knowledge and feelings do have a convergence. And I think that's what ilm tasawwuf, Islamic psychology, what have you, that's where the cross of the path is, right? And where devotion and knowledge converge is this knowledge of muraqabah and self-assessment and muhasabah. I'm feeling this, okay? This is unlawful if we take it to its logical conclusion. This is the cure. The cure of hasad is another thought pattern. The thought pattern of who gave them all that? And what is it even? It's dunya. What do I care? This dunya is so short. This contemplation is really a branch of knowledge. But then I would say that 25% of it, and he did say that he's not ignoring all Nawafil, but you putting knowledge first. And I'm telling you that he's right about this, that knowledge is something that lasts and stuff grows out of it, even if it seems painstaking at the moment. But the devotional aspect, the dhikr aspect of it, is what cures the feeling. What cures. You can have a lot of knowledge about yourself. It's dhikr that is the medicine, right? And when you take that dhikr as the medicine, that's where the feeling element comes in. We can alter that feeling. Dhikr alters that feeling, right? Fikr will lead you to the fact that I need dhikr, right? Like knowledge will lead you to the fact that I need this medicine. But those people who just go on dhikr, 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 and they don't read, they don't study, and they have an antagonism towards thinking, towards reading, towards the sabr that it takes to read and study, right? They're going to suffer, right? They're going to suffer. So knowledge really leads us to the place where it gives us the solutions that dhikr is a cure. And that's where this post-deconstruction era, and where it's just about what you feel, that's sort of like the antidote to that, right? And I think practicing Muslims, their life and what they're doing is a demonstration that we have an antidote to this deconstruction, this post-deconstructional world and worldview, and the result of what it's leading people to. Just because you feel some way. All right, what if a fox feels like a hen? Are you going to let it in? Are you going to let it into the pen? So now you have boys feeling like girls, and then they're getting raped. Girls getting raped. So all this from the deconstruction, feeling-based world. And we're the opposite, right? We assess our feelings. And some feelings you let them grow, and you keep feeding them, and you keep feeding them. And some feelings you don't. Like certain behaviors you cannot do in public. If you do, you destroy society, like defecation. What's happening in California, right? You went to California recently, and I'm sure, guarantee anyone who's go to San Francisco, and you guys work there, you and Basha work there, people are defecating everywhere now. And it's almost like they don't want to make laws on this, right? They don't want to do anything. It's insane. Darus-Salam, who runs it? The Mufti Azimuddin, his dad, his brothers, they run it. They're the founders of it. That's down the road. It's down the road of Darul Qasim, from Darul Qasim. Darul Qasim, as we said, it's heading to an accreditation. Okay. Whereas Darus-Salam is like it's an institute. They're not getting accredited. Okay. Not that I know of. But Darul Qasim, as I said, it's like focused on scholarship. Darus-Salam is like in mass. And it's focused on producing huffaz and fuqaha, right? There's a lot of hifz. But they're also social. Like it's a public mosque. The front of Darus-Salam is a public masjid, right? Anyone walk in and pray. And they use it as a college space, as school space. And they have a high school program. Like you could take high school there. You take high school on the computer, right? On the side, right? And I saw them like just studying on the side, maybe have a math tutor, and they're part of an online high school. So they take their secular classes and then they take their hifz. That's far more, I mean, people differ about this, but what is the most important thing? Gotta be the Book of Allah. If you're an Islamic civilization, that's gotta be, then all the scholarship, the studies after the secular studies are around that, right? Doesn't that make sense? In any Islamic civilization, the first but most important book is the Book of Allah, right? So that takes a central role, and then the secular subjects around that. Okay, now let's go to comments, questions. What do we got here? No questions of what's that?
There is an older question.
Let's read it.
So is there really any difference between Ibn Arabi's Wahdatul-Wujud and Shaykh Sirhindi's Wahdatus-Shuhud? It seems like semantics. How do you define existence? And that both are acceptable Dhanni perspectives.
I don't know. Wahdatus-Shuhud is known. Wahdatus-Shuhud is simply saying that everything we see it as a direct creation of Allah. And you see what attribute of Allah is manifesting from that. Okay. You don't see anything as that's mustaqillah. Or that's mustaqillah as an independent essence. It's not an independent essence. So every person in our life, Allah is doing something for us through that person. Not to us, for us. And to us if we committed sins. And even that is for us. It's for your benefit. Every single thing. Every single person in your life. Every single event. That's Wahdatus-Shuhud is like that. So when you see Allah and you're seeing that Allah is manifesting something so that you can have a concept of what Jalal is like, of what fear is like, of what power is like. When you see things in the creation, you always view them from that lens. That's the summary of Wahdatus-Shuhud, and no one differs on that. Wahdatul-Wujud, there is something that we have to dismiss. We have to dismiss any concept that is hululi, or that everything is just that we're all merely any hulul, anything that merges between God and the creation, that is pantheistic in that sense, that we dismiss that. And of course Ibn Arabi didn't mean that. It's impossible for him to have meant that as a Muslim. Tafaddal.
Explain the difference between the two Ibn Arabis.
Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi.
Okay.
He is a Qadi. And it's good that you mentioned that, because there's some comments on whether or not Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi took that back or not, took back his statement or not. So let's go to that. The other is Ibn Arabi, who is purely a Sufi. And he studied in Andalus, then he went down across and died in Damascus, Syria. Let's now go to what Mu'in sent me. He said, by the way, I want you to read this to see if Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi took back, let's see, where is it? Ibn al-Arabi. Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi al-Faqih. Okay. Let's see where that is. He says that he took it back. Let's see, what is it now? Where did he send that to me? Oh, here it is. Qadi Abu Bakr, did he walk back his statement in later books? Died with Bukhari on his chest, right? That's what they all say. All right. Made Tawbah on his deathbed and died with Bukhari on his chest. That's everyone, right? Anyone controversial? Any of your shuyukh made a mistake in the past? Made Tawbah on his deathbed and died with Bukhari on his chest. Okay. Where does it say that Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi took back his works? The aim of this paper is to examine certain works of Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi al-Faqih, okay, and to ascertain the chronology of some of his works. Okay, is Awasim min al-Qawasim? It should be all right. Is it his final work? Okay, and has his final opinion. All right. This needs inquiry. All right. So he's inquiring. So let's see. Qadi's opinion on Sayyidina al-Imam al-Hussein, that he was a rebel against Islam and killed by the sword of his grandfather. We contend the quote, which to date is still on the website of the Shaykh. Okay. And I don't know what Shaykh has a website. The basis for this opinion, for these opinions, and the statement from the Qadi is from Awasim wal Qawasim. Okay, he says, we intend that we cleanse the earth from the wine of Yazid and the spilled blood of Al-Hussein. A calamity came to us which the joy of time cannot repair. Not one came out to him except by an interpretation, and they did not kill him except by what they had heard from his grandfather, the guardian of the emissaries. I doubt that Ibn Ziyad and Yazid, they were looking in the books and saying, what is the hukm of the rebel? What the Prophet want us to do here? Are you serious? Do you think that they went and said, what does the Prophet want us to do? Yes, he wants us to kill his grandson. Absurdity. I mean, that's absurd, right? They just had an interpretation that this is what the Prophet would want us to do. Are you serious? That's absurd. We can understand this coming from the Shia, for they are, forget the Shia, and we're talking about Ahl Sunnah. However, from a Sunni Maliki Shaykh who has promoted the school of Malik, edited the translation, and printed in 1995, he says it's an untenable position. Unless they are genuinely not aware of the familiar later opinion of the Qadi, a reprint has been done. The defense against disaster was the name given. Okay. To date, there has only been one critical complete edition of the Awasim by Dr. Talibi. All right. I'm talking about just like the different, I want the khulasa here. I mean, I would love to read the whole thing, but I'm not going to read the whole thing on a stream. He does a good discussion on the transmission of the book and the different editions of the book. Okay. And that there is a false version of the Awasim, which he calls a pretender. And then we are now swimming in different editions and different statements, right? And so, like, you remember what the Shaykh, what Shaykh Amin just said about people, what they said about Ibn Arabi? Many people, when they love Ibn Arabi, and they're in Syria, and you have to love Ibn Arabi if you're in Damascus, but they just can't stomach certain opinions, or they just disbelieve certain opinions that are completely wrong. They spin around it and say, no. It's not Ibn Arabi who was wrong. The transmission was wrong, right? It's inaccurate, right? Okay, but how do you know it's inaccurate? So Shaykh Amin says, no, by and large, it's accurate. Because when you write so much, you're going to repeat your opinions, right? Yeah. So that's where, and we say this too about Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, when he says, على العرش المجيد بذاته in the Risala, and the ulama said, this is wrong, right? And then some say, no, he meant to put a period here and begin the new sentence. على العرش المجيد, period. And then بذاته is a new sentence. Okay, fair enough. Another, no, it was a wrong, the copyists made a mistake. Okay, you know where all that disappears? He repeats it in another book. Right? He repeats it in another book. So why don't we just do the right thing and say, a great scholar made a mistake? Why don't people just say this when the ones they look up to made a mistake, right? He made a mistake.
Wahhabis do that.
Simple, huh?
So the Wahhabis do that.
With their people?
Yeah, they just said he repented, right?
Yeah, he repented on his deathbed. Died Bukhari on his chest. But we should, the reason we are is we don't follow any item because he's masum. So make a mistake. We Nabi or something? We don't make mistakes all the time, and just admit it. So Defense Against Disaster, edited by Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Murabit, who mentions nothing about the edition other than he was so enamored by the notes of the editor, you know, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Ian Dallas, head of the Murabitun. Okay? For they, I'm assuming that's him, Abdul Qadir al-Murabit. For they seem to him as an important text. Nothing is mentioned that this is a chapter which the editor has taken from the Awasim. However, he doesn't mention, again, more discussion on the text, which is not wrong. It's good what he's doing, but it's just we're not going to read that on the stream. Okay. All sorts of different works. Where is any content here? I'm looking for any content on. Doesn't seem like there's much content on where or quote or something that's authoritative to say that. All right, here we go. The contentious opinion of the Qadi about Imam Hussein. After all that, this is where we want. Okay. We move now to present the opinion of Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi on the person of Sayyidina al-Imam al-Hussein radiallahu ta'ala anhu. We translate his exact words from the complete edition of the Awasim and then from the Arida or the Arida And finally, okay, Arida, I guess, from the Masadiq. He says, we intend that we cleanse the earth from the wine of Yazid, meaning he's disavowing from Yazid, and the spilled blood of Al-Hussein. A calamity came to us, which the joy of time cannot repair. So that part seems sympathetic, okay? Calls it a calamity. The spilled blood. Not one came out to help to him except by an interpretation. How does he know that? How does he know that they went with a sound intention and an ijtihad? And what person would have an ijtihad that this is what the Prophet ﷺ wants us to do? And they did not kill him except by what they had heard from his grandfather, the guardian of the emissaries, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. From this, people have concluded that what people have concluded, for we are not responsible for what people conclude. This, the opinion of the Qadi, has been used to malign him from his death to now. No one has even highlighted that this obnoxious opinion was an earlier opinion. He changed his opinion, okay, on quite a few points, which he had written within the Awasim, if the editors of his works had just highlighted that his later works gave a different opinion. Maybe in the future, well, where is that second opinion? Okay. Maybe in the future something could be written, blah, blah, blah. The six is that they are in people just... As to that, you withhold the hand from one who is not fit to rule, an oppressor, an abuser, wrongdoings, then no. With this interpretation, the two nobles, Hussein ibn Ali and Abdullah bin Zubayr, arose against Yazid. So in another opinion, he's saying here that it was valid for them to rise up against the governor. People disagreed. Some said you rise up against the oppressive governor, right, if he is not fit to rule. And that's what Al-Hussein and Al-Zubayr did. This is the same author commenting on the same situation. However, he states that someone who is not fit to rule, an oppressor, an abuser, and wrongs, then no, for this was the interpretation of Imam Al-Hussein. As to the pledge of allegiance to the Imam and the obedience to him when he is not fit for that, do you contest or do you rise against him? Yes or no? Sorry, do you contest and rise against him? Yes or no? From them who said yes, that which is necessitated by agreement with the pledge, establishing is no contesting the matter. Blah, blah, blah. He's saying that there are some people who said no, and then some people said yes, and this is the basis of Hussein, Sayyidina Hussein and Sayyidina Abdullah bin Zubayr. Okay? So, but it's not necessarily negating his first opinion, because the first opinion is not whether or not Al-Hussein's revolt was valid. It was that whether or not Yazid and Ibn Ziyad acted upon an interpretation. In other words, he's saying, because both could be the case. This does not negate the first opinion, right? So yes, so Hussein had a valid ta'wil to go and rebel. And yes, according to the first opinion, yes, Yazid and Ibn Ziyad also had a valid interpretation to go and quell the rebellion. He's still having a great husn al-dhann and giving a lot of credit to Yazid and Ibn Ziyad, that they truly wanted what the Prophet wanted, right? That doesn't negate the first opinion so far. Okay. So I don't see. To conclude, we have shown by an internal examination of the Qadi's works, the Nawasim is one that his earliest work and the Arida and the Masadiq are two of his later works. The opinion of Qadi has written in these two works are the ones that he died on. It doesn't negate it. I don't understand what he's saying here, because it does not negate it. Am I right or wrong? Right? So it is possible that two groups fighting, both of them are doing a valid ta'wil, and neither of them are guilty, right? That's what he's upon right now. That's what Qadi Abu Bakr is upon right now. Because the first opinion never said Hussein was wrong. It is a defense of Yazid and Ibn Ziyad. So after all this reading, and that's the summary, why couldn't he put in, not gonna be, pessimistic or anything, but when you have articles like this, by the way, this seems to be a respectable scholar, so I'm not dissing the scholar who wrote this. Okay. But I don't see how is it a take back? How is it a walk back? You didn't walk back your position. You still held, Qadi Abu Bakr still held that Yazid and Ibn Ziyad are upon a valid opinion, right? Or an ijtihad. Like they had a good intent in this. Explain to me, in what world do you have a good intent to kill the Prophet's grandson? No. Next. Yes.
Piggybacking off of Shaykh Amin's advice, I was going to ask you, what advice would you have mostly for students of knowledge?
A student of knowledge, I think you have to play the long game. That's my a lot of people get caught up in the immediate years, and that's a mistake, right? You got to realize that the talab al-ilm it's a long-term thing, and you have to have a lot of sabr, and the time that passes will be the test of our sabr and our ikhlas in seeking knowledge, right? Because if you hold out and you keep going and you don't stop, you will attain the knowledge. You may not, and remember, I said yesterday, I'm very suspicious about, not suspicious, but I have a certain observations. When you go to a school that's prestigious, it has an ability to ruin you. Because everywhere you go, he said, where do you go? Oh, I went to so-and-so. All of a sudden, you feel like you've arrived, whereas you haven't, right? Whereas people who go to some dusty school or some unknown school, or people who don't go to any school and they studied here and they studied there, people always look down on you. Or they don't view you as anything. That is good for you. I'm telling you that's good for you. How many, this is a silly example, but it's true. It's the same concept of human psychology. How many first-round picks are a bust? And how many greats in any sport were like the 100th pick? Because he walks on the field, no cameras are running to him. No money is coming into his bank account. What does that do? That makes him focus on the game and prepare and get better, right? So likewise, when people say, when they, like, let's say, graduate from a local operation like us here, and then they go to a great school, okay? They have a test. Yes, you may learn a lot, but you come back and you drop that name, right? Your world is changing, and that's not good. And people view you differently. That's not good. So you have to be very careful from that. And there was a study done, secular study, that said that they tracked some of the greats, and they wanted to see what's the correlation, the great success stories in various industries. So pharmaceutical, business, medical, all different industries. And they said, let's track the best of them. And let's see what they had in common regarding their schooling. They said there was in fact a surprise. The vast bulk of them came from regular, mediocre, no-name institutions. So then they did a second study because they got curious. They said, let's see their counterparts, the people who graduated the same year from the same towns, etc., who went to the Ivy Leagues, and let's see where they are. And they turn out to be like not as successful, right? So they say, how is it, like the counterpart in the industry? Someone who graduated the same year you did and went down the medical route. You ended up here, and this person who should have been just like you, but he went to an Ivy League school, he ended up down here. And they found overall, of course there's not 100%, but overall, these people who had weaker looking or mediocre educational institutes or not big names, they did better consistently. And they said, this is bizarre. This makes no sense. It shouldn't make any sense, right? But then they went to the deeper psychology behind it. All those who went to those posh schools of the Harvards and Yales of the world and the Oxfords and the Cambridges, they got posh, they got soft, their hunger died. They were satisfied. Like, this is, all right, this is my thing in life. Whereas those who went to like Hartford or Cleveland or school, no names, right? And some of them self-taught. In some fields, you could be self-taught. Like in business, you don't need to go to school. Self-taught. These guys, at the same age in life, no one was looking up to them. Everyone dismissed their education, dismissed them. Like, you're not someone to look at. That fueled their fire. And they went off to succeed, right? So don't be, my message is to Shabab, look at the long run and don't look at the immediate names. Even the Asanid. I know someone, subhanAllah, that I thought I would study under. Right? 10 years studied with one of the biggest shuyukh daily. And when he came back, like a complete, astaghfirullah azim, like a flop. No impact. No impact. And just seems self-satisfied. Like he arrived. He got his gift from Allah already, as if that, right? Like I got the gift. I did the 10 years with the Shaykh, etc., etc. No hunger now to like prove yourself, to do something. But life actually begins. Your output begins right after you're supposed to begin after you study. So that's something, it's a mirage. I guarantee you it is a mirage. What you should look for is the hungry person. And the time that passes will test your ikhlas. The more people look at you, oh, this is nothing, right? That's a test of ikhlas. Okay. And the more time passes and you see that your peers have passed you by, are you going to keep going? Or are you going to be so worked up on the inside that you just want to check out? I don't even want to be here anymore, right? It's a test of ikhlas. So don't imagine that talab al-ilm is like university where you do 4 years and I'm done. And I really need this prestige in these 4 years. That's all a trick of shaitan and a trick of the ego at the same time. Asim al-Hakim, by the way, I did track down his nationality. He's a Saudi. I didn't expect that at all, right? He's a Saudi national. And I'm not going to be totally disrespectful to the guy, but he is pretty consistent. Like, sometimes you have imams that are, they got drama. He seems to be, like, pretty steady, right? And you know what he's going to say. You could disagree or not. Anyway. For some reason, every time he opens his mouth, I laugh, right? I'm not laughing at him. Everything about him is funny, right? Something about him, something about him is just comedic by his nature. And I'm not laughing at him. I just think the way he talks is hilarious. I don't know, what is it about him?
Naturally funny.
Yeah, he's just naturally like that.
Like he'll say a normal statement, but it'll be funny. Like
Yeah. I mean, I like to separate between the person and his manhaj and what he says. Because we know that we're totally different worlds. He doesn't believe that Wahhabis exist. Like, we're in a different world, right? We're in a different world. By the way, their group they were called, what were they called? Al-Ikhwan. Not Ikhwan Muslimin of the Arab world, but their original group were called the Ikhwan, right? And they killed Muslims who disagreed with them in Aqidah. Okay, in any event. And even so much so that their king had to disband them all and fight them. Okay. Well, Asim al-Hakim said in a Q&A that it's permissible to eat things like Big Mac in USA as a Christian country. Did he live in the USA to see what kind of Christian country this is? Where's the Christianity? Our company's Christian, right? Let's say you have a Christian country. Our company's Christian? Is Tyson's? It's Chick-fil-A, it actually is. They're Christian, right? But the question is, do they slaughter? Maybe in one Hanbali opinion, it doesn't matter if they slaughter or not. But the mas'ala is, the assumption is the Jew and the Christian who slaughters. So if I go to Amish, Pennsylvania, and the Christian man is there and he slaughters, that's different. It's the slaughtering as a Christian. So he used an example of the Prophet eating food from the Jewish tribe as proof. That is correct, because the Jews slaughtered. Okay. And that's kosher, yeah. So Christians, do they slaughter? By and large, no. And the only small sects, okay, small sects, such as the Amish, will do that, okay. And then we can eat that food, okay. Asim al-Hakim said it was all right to drink 4% alcoholic beer. No. هذا متنجس. You put any alcohol into anything, and it has been rendered najis, unless he's talking about the old school nabidh, okay? And, you know, I doubt that that's what it is, because nabidh does not alter your mental state, and it is not fully fermented. Nabidh, there is a gradient between juice and fermented juice. That middle area is called nabidh. It is not fully fermented, so we cannot even say it's an alcoholic drink. It alters your mood, but not your mind. So these are common fatwa that come from the Salafi backgrounds. I mean, I don't know about the alcoholic one, but definitely all of the food of Ahl Kitab, regardless, right, is permitted, regardless of how they slaughter it. But that's not the fatwa that we're going to go by or teach. Okay.
It's actually interesting.
Let's hear it.
So one of the viewers was commenting before how, like, Imran Khan, you know how he's in jail and stuff. And obviously we don't want to go into that. It's been like 10 times that we've covered it.
Yep.
But they're saying that he asked for books in jail. And so I asked the viewer, I'm like, all right, can you give us the list?
Yep.
And so they sent it right now, and they said he asked for these books in jail. He asked for the Shifa, the Muqaddimah, Riyadus-Salihin, a book called The Message of the Quran, Islam and Quran, Vision of Islam, Life of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and a bunch of Sirah books.
Okay.
Life and Times of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Yep.
I think they're like asking.
Like, are we going to give it to him?
No, he's asking, so he's in jail, right? And he
All these books are great. Yeah.
That's what he's requesting.
Yeah. So,
It's interesting.
like, I'm surprised that he's requesting that. Doesn't he have 1,000 assistants and he's a millionaire? Just tell his PA to go get him those books, right? Is he putting that out in public?
No, like he's gonna get them. I think.
Okay, good.
That's the books that he's getting.
That's
in jail.
excellent. His wife is a sheikh, by the way, like a scholar, I think. Isn't she? That's what I heard. That he married, like a mystic.
A lot of Sirah in the list.
So that's good. Very good. You know, what else are you going to do in jail? Except for read and do dhikr. And how about give him books on death and afterlife? How alive is Tasawwuf in Egypt? It's there. You have it. You can go to gatherings. Is it totally prohibited to recite Fatiha after the Imam in loud rakas? The Shafi'iyya require you to recite the Fatiha after the Imam. And that's why sometimes the Imam will pause. Otherwise, we listen to the Imam only, and we don't recite with the Imam. What's the best way of explaining Salafiyya to someone who doesn't know about that? Shaykhs they listen to are with this group. Salafiyya is a fifth madhab, but we will not accept its usul. Right? We won't accept a fifth madhab. We don't need a fifth madhab. But it is a madhab, right? But one of the problems with it does not have one founding imam, and hence many of its usul and furu'a become fluid. That's the problem. It's very fluid. You think that it's, Quran and Sunnah is one thing, but when you look at their actual opinions, they're very all over the place. In Aqidah, all over the place. There was a brother who made a compilation of the
fatwa.
different fatwa in Aqidah, let alone fiqh. So what is better for a person is to take a madhab that has a founder, that has a crisp usul. These are the usul. Of course, later scholars within the madhab have added and subtracted, but at least we have tracks. And we know who the imams of the madhab are and what are the mu'tamad books. Salafiyya. And that's one thing I guess I sort of regret about in the debate. I listed Wahhabis. Right? Remember that debate that we did? And I said all these groups, and I listed all the groups, and I put Wahhabis at the bottom. What I should have put is Salafis. Because in a sense, it's a whole nother madhab. And I don't think Salafi is in line with most of the madhahib, the four madhabs. Of all, their fiqh will be Hanbali. Aligned with Hanbali and Shafi'i fiqh, probably most. But in Aqidah, Hanabila, mostly along the Hanbali line, and they will part from them. Sheikh Yusuf ibn Sadiq and Sheikh Hatim al-Hajj, he says the Salafiyya are not Hanabila in Aqidah. They are their own Aqidah. They are not Hanabila at all. He said, do not bundle them. So what I'm saying is they may resemble the Hanabila the most. They may cite them the most. They may be mixed with them the most, associated with them the most. But Dr. Hatim al-Hajj, we're going to go by him, right? And Sheikh Yusuf bin Sadiq. And they both say the Hanabila is one track, the Salafi is another track. So we're just going to cite the authorities. Is giving homeless food to the homeless considered zakat? No, it's not. Number one, zakat has to go to specific categories. Has to go to a Muslim. That's number one, a poor Muslim. Sadaqah can go to anybody. But zakah must go to a Muslim who is impoverished. And three, it has to go in kind. So that means I have zakah on money, I have to give it in money. I cannot give it in gift cards. ShopRite gift card, no. I cannot give it in food. I have $1,000 of zakat, let me buy $1,000 of grain and give it out. No. You have to give it in kind. You have zakah on crops, you have to give it in crops. Unless the wali, the governor says, no, I want it in money. Because that's what the people need. Right? So that's the condition of zakah. It has to be given in kind. Gold, silver, and currency are all one. So if you have gold, you can give dollars. You don't have to give it in gold. That means you don't have to chip away at your pieces of gold to give the zakah. You can give it in the value in currency. Is Sealed Nectar a good seerah book? It's a seerah text that does something that no other seerah book did, which is limited to sahih hadiths. And seerah does not require that. In our usul, aqidah and fiqh require sahih and hasan hadiths only. But seerah allows for the da'if. And it allows for even that which is very weak sayings, athar. And that's the difference between the sealed nectar, seerah, and that's the difference between seerah and a hadith of rulings and ahkam. Okay. All right, North Korea. So we answered that question. In the grave, will we be shown a photo of the Prophet, or we physically come to the grave and we will be asked, who is this man? Allahu A'lam, but the questioning will take place. That's what we know. The questioning will take place. Traversing the Sacred asks the question, is this Traversing Tradition, the same group, or no? What is your view of Hassan Spiker on modern Akbarism? I have to be honest with you. We have been taught by Saad al-Ba'alawi. We do not read the books of Ibn Arabi. So I read the biography of Ibn Arabi just from the devotional side of Ibn Arabi. But once it got into his thought, I really just sort of stopped there. Because we don't read his books, and they say they give two opinions. Either what's in it is the correct transmission, you'll be confused. Or it's not the correct transmission, therefore don't read it. So they go by both, right? And they say we don't read his book. We have a very good opinion of him. We don't hold him to be a kafir, a mubtadi', a zindiq. No, we have a good opinion of Ibn Arabi. But we do not hold that he... Why do we have a good opinion of Ibn Arabi? Because all the ulama Sham, when he died, they had a great opinion and they prayed upon him. Who's going to know better about Ibn Arabi? The people who came 700 years after, however many years after, or the people who lived in his time? And we know who the ulama of Sham were at that time. Like, our Islamic history is documented. And that's one of the lectures about Ibn Arabi, that's what they said. They said, ulama al-Sham used to read his books, write him letters of approval, they attended his janazah. And what is the ruling of attending the janazah of a fasiq fil jawarih, a sinner of limbs, let alone an innovator, let alone a complete zindiq? The imams are not allowed to attend those funerals. It's a signal to the people. He's a fasiq. Imams should not attend the funeral, and I'm saying this as a general rule. Maybe there are exceptions here and there, right? But they don't attend. They don't are not allowed. It's makruh as karahiyah, not tahrim. Karahiyah, discouragement, not prohibition, to attend the funeral of a public sinner, let alone an innovator, and a zindiq doesn't even get a burial. Like, how about that? If he's actually a zindiq, why did they even bury him with the Muslims? He shouldn't have been buried with the Muslims at all. Go, find someone else to bury him. That's how it would be. Or we would bury him, like let's say your mom's a non-Muslim. She dies. What do? You don't give her the rituals of ghusl and all that, but you shroud and bury. That's it. No prayers, no rituals, nothing. But you do have to respect the body. You shroud it and you bury it in a non-Muslim graveyard. That's what you do if you have a non-Muslim parent. So why didn't they do that with him? Or just let someone else do that? But no, they all got involved. They all prayed the janazah upon him. And there are a lot of quotes from their contemporaries in praise of him. But the works were deemed to be confusing to people, and hence we don't read them. Also, he said he had famous for bad handwriting. I guess this is what maybe Shaykh Amin would call a cop-out, because it does sound a bit fishy, right? They say he had terrible handwriting, right? And so the copyist is like, well, I don't know what he's saying here. Let me just, come up with something, right?
Probably what to say about Imam Nawawi as well.
What?
He's probably Athari.
Oh, yeah. So he just accidentally wrote all his Tanzihi content, all over Sahih Muslim. So what are they going to say about Imam Nawawi? That an Ashari took over the copyists of him, right? And wrote all that stuff? What is the difference between a fasiq and a zindiq? A fasiq, generally we use this term as a shameless public sinner. We all commit sins, right? But we don't do it publicly in front of everybody. We shouldn't, right? Openly. I'm going to open a liquor store with no shame. Versus, behind closed doors, I fall for my ego and my nafs. And I obey my nafs privately and I feel bad about it. That type of person still has the ability to be a salih and a tawab and be beloved by Allah because he makes tawbah. He has the decency and the iman to keep his sins private. The fasiq has passed that boundary. Sadly and unfortunately for him, he sins publicly and openly. Okay? That's a fasiq. Then you have an innovator, a mubtadi', a bid'i. He's past the level of sins of the limbs and he's into beliefs now. He holds beliefs that are heretical, that are inconsistent with the Quran. He's a mubtadi'. The mubtadi' is a Muslim, but his deeds are not accepted until he corrects his iman, and we don't pray behind him, we don't go to his masjid, we don't do anything with him. Then as zindiq, his beliefs are out of Islam altogether. We don't bury him. The marriage with him is invalidated on the spot. The marriage to an innovator is sinful.
What does it mean though?
What? His beliefs are out of Islam. It's a heretic. He is a kafir, but he calls himself a Muslim. Yeah, Qadiani call themselves Muslim, right? And that's the difference between the apostate. The apostate is telling you, I'm not a Muslim anymore. He apostated. Openly, he's not having the identity of a Muslim. The zindiq has the identity of a Muslim. He's saying I'm a Muslim, but his beliefs are completely against Islam, such as the Muslim evolutionists. In one opinion, they're completely zindiq, right? In another opinion, they're mubtadi'ah, right? I like the opinion of Sheikh Noor. You're a zindiq, okay? You got to make things cut and dry. You give these people an inch, Muslim evolutionist is one of the most absurd ideas. I'll tell you why. Because they have to believe that Sayyidina Adam and Sayyidina Hawa had parents. And these parents were not human. So some mammal or other. Some ape-like mammal. So wait, either, where does that lead us? There are apes in the heavens? Or that they were created here on the earth. But then how did you come down? Ihbitu minha Jami'a. Go down from it. So go down from heaven to earth? No, they say, no, there was a hill. And they came down. Go down from this hill. Wait, where's such a special hill on the earth that I would not want to come down from, right? And how does that explain that Adam and Hawa lived on a mountain? So they clearly didn't go off a hill. They stayed on a hill. They lived on a mountain, right? And why do they live on a mountain? Because mountains have everything. There are two types of mountains. There's the rocky mountain, and there's the mountain with life in it. The mountain that has trees and caves and rivers and streams and goats. And it makes sense because they didn't yet build homes, so they had cover, right? They had ability to go into a cave for the shade and stuff like this, right? Until they learned to build homes and do other things and settle on the flatlands, right? So how do you explain all this? So you just keep going from one thing to the next. Oh, you have a problem explaining away, because they are married to causation. They hold causation to be absolute. That causation is the real musabbib of things. That's the real Aqidah problem with the Muslim evolutionists. All right, explain to us Prophet Jesus. And Allah brought Prophet Jesus onto the earth around the middle of the time of or late in the time of humanity, right? So then, where is exactly your explanation of Prophet Jesus? They say, no, he did not have the institution of the father. He had a father, but he had the institution. So wait a second, how is Maryam a virgin then? Are you saying, well, where is her marriage? Like, think about this. In Islam, marriage is public, right? Where's her marriage? And why is Isa attributed to her and not to the father? So what if his father died? You're still son of that father, right? Is not Muhammad ibn Abdullah, alayhi salatu wasalam? Did he ever meet his father? No. But he's called Muhammad ibn Abdullah. Why is Isa called Isa ibn Maryam? Right? That's the only attribution possible for him. Right? So they just keep digging hole after hole after hole after hole. The Muslim evolutionist. Ajhal al-Mubtadi'a, Ajhal al-Zanadiqa is the Muslim evolutionist. He's the most ignorant of Zindiqs. He will dig himself into hole, and I told you before what one of them said. He said that there is a possibility in nature of mammals or animals giving birth without a pair. Right? And I said, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, just gives birth like that without anything. I said, okay, give me one example. He said, there's a species of frogs. I was like, wow, you went from one heresy to another. So you are now saying that she just happened to have a kid like a frog. Now, frogs, that species of frogs, all of them do that. All those frogs have, right? They give birth. Asexual reproduction. All the frogs have that. So if that was the case in humans, then why don't we have that all over the place? Why just one and it happened to be the mother of a prophet? Come on. Look, they're married to causation. That's what they believe. Things can only exist by causation. We say, yes, when Allah wills something to exist, there is a cause that he creates, and he can create any cause he wants, and he can create without a cause if he wants. A cause being a middle thing, right? Okay. That's their problem. And why is it that it has to be something that you could see? It could be a cause that you don't see. Right? So materialists, I think, is the wrong explanation of people. They're not materialists. They're reductionists. They reduce knowledge to what their own eyes can see and their tools can measure. We say, no, there are, everything that is created is material in its nature. There are different materials. The soul is a very subtle vapor-like material, some people say. Why? Because Allah says he blows in it. He blew it into the soul, into the body. And what do you blow? A vapor, right? So it's vapor-like. They say it is a warm vapor-like substance. Very subtle vapor. Why do they say it's warm? Because when it's removed from the body, the blood cools down. What is the source of heat in the human being is the blood, right? And the blood passes through the heart. So that from all this, they deduce backwards that the nature of the soul, we can maybe be able to say, it's a warm vapor-like substance that settles in the heart of the human being. And hence warms up the heart, okay? And that's why you could take off different limbs and you could still be alive. But you take out the heart and you're dead. So this is some speculations that they say, that it's warm, vapor-like material that settles around the area of the heart and warms the body up. And it is the soul that requires the air, right? So that is another proof that it's vapor-like, because it needs air, right? It needs to breathe. You take the soul out and the body cools down and the air stops coming out of the body, right? And that's how you know that the soul is gone. They used to take a mirror or a glass in front of and put it in front of a person to see if the breath would create a vapor. If there's breath, they know he's still alive. If there's vapor, not everyone knows how to check the pulse, right? If there's vapor on the glass, they know he's still alive. That is the effect of the soul. That's what they say. So we don't deny that everything that Allah creates has a material substance. We assume that. We accept that. But what we do deny is that it's limited to what we can hear and see. Okay. Khalil says, how do we explain a heart transplant then? Good question. Well, the heart is kept alive and then merely the organ is changed. We're not saying that the heart is married to that, the soul is married to that specific heart. We don't say that, right?
Actually, just to add on to that, I think Shaykh Murad mentioned this.
Yeah.
He was saying how people that do heart transplants, they found that a lot of times what happens is the person's heart that it was, they tend to pick up on that person's personality.
They do.
So I think
it's a bit of a mixture, right?
And it's it's not even just now and then. It's 1 in 100. It's something that they see.
It's consistent.
Common. And then I think there was one case of I think it was a pig heart transplant of some guy. I don't know if you saw that.
What happened to him? He died, right?
I think I don't know if he died, but from what I remember, he started picking up traits
of a pig,
of an animal.
Unbelievable.
Do you remember that? I don't know. It was pretty big.
We got to look that up.
Yeah.
Look that up real quick. That's interesting. We've seen a lot of them act like pigs without the transplant, right? But that's a good question. So we don't know a lot about of these things, but we're deducing backwards based upon what Allah said in the Quran about the ruh. The ruh, there's a lot of discussion on the ruh and the nafs. It's very clear in the Quran that it's the nafs that is responsible, that is takes action, that will be asked, okay? And that the ruh is akin to a secret inspiration in the human being of how he should live. Because the ruh in the Quran is always referring to a new creation and a new law and a new set of rules. So why Sayyidina Isa bin Maryam in specific is called the ruh of Allah? Everywhere Sayyidina Isa is mentioned, the ruh he's described as a ruh. He's aided by a ruh because he was created differently and hence has a different set of rules by which he lives. He can, at any time, by the permission of Allah, give life to the dead. He was doing it all the time. What other prophet did this regularly? He, by the permission of Allah, is able now to cure the blind. Okay? Who else can do that? Not just one time, no, regularly. Cure skin diseases and other diseases. He has a different, he also can leave this earth, go to the heavens, and come back, right? Who else has this way of living? Why? Because he's a new creation. Remember we said earlier, human being is created 6 different ways. So why do evolutionists stuck that creation has to be one way? Adam was created one way, Hawa was created one way. Zakaria, Sayyidina Yahya and Ishaq were created one way. All of us were created one way. Sayyidina Isa was created a different way. And all of us will be recreated in the afterlife a different way. Okay. How will your soul meet your body? Are you going to be born again? No, you're not going to be born again. Your soul will come out, and then the matter that will make up your body will be magnetically attracted to that soul, and you have a new body. Boom. We could have been created like that earlier. Sayyidina Adam could have been created like that if Allah wanted, but he wasn't. Sayyidina Adam was created as a statue first. A statue that you could knock. Salsalin kal fakhar. Personality. All right, let's close with this. Personality changes following heart transplantations. This has been reported for decades, including accounts of recipients acquiring the personality characteristic of the donor. Okay. 4 categories of... move it over a little bit because the lamp's in the way. Yeah, that's good. Personality changes are discussed in this article. Changes in preferences, alterations in emotions and temperament, modifications of identity, memories from the donor's life. Memories. Imagine having memories, but it's someone else's life. By the way, we're reading from PubMed. Okay.
It's an actual research article.
Okay. The acquisition of donor personality characteristics by recipients following heart transplantations is hypothesized to occur via the transfer of cellular memory, and 4 types of cellular memory are epigenetic memory, DNA memory, RNA memory, and protein memory. Other possibilities, such as the transfer of memory via intracardiac neurological memory and energetic memory, are discussed as well. Implications for the future of heart transplantation are explored, including the importance of re-examining our current definition of death, studying how the transfer of memories might affect the integration of a donated heart, determining whether memories can be. So you donate the heart of a Hafiz, you suddenly wake up as a Hafiz. Can be transferred via the transplantation of other organs, and investigating which types of information can be transferred via heart transplantation.
This is crazy.
What's that?
I don't know how true this is, but someone commented there's a case of a girl with a new heart who solved the murder of the donor.
Wow.
So the person got killed.
That is amazing. I
guess they like tapped into the memories before they died,
bro,
and then like saw who killed them.
Netflix movie right there. Crazy. I mean, that's a great movie plot. That is a great movie plot, right? That's a great movie plot. All right, little girl grows up, has an accident, has a disease or whatever, gets the heart transplant, right? And then starts having visions and starts having different preferences, and then all of a sudden she finds herself in a location where she shouldn't be, where the criminals are, right? She doesn't know why she's attracted to this warehouse, right? And then all of a sudden she finds criminals there, and then all her memories come back, and she realizes she solved a massive crime.
That's actually a good plot.
That's a movie.
And it's not even supernatural.
She was 8 years old, huh?
It's not even supernatural.
No, it's not even science fiction.
That guy died, by the way, after 2 months.
The pig.
61 days. Yeah.
Wow, 61 days. Experimenting on people. Ladies and gentlemen, we are over the time. Jazakumullahu khairan, everyone. We'll see you all Monday, bi'idhnillah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. Nastaghfiruk wa natubu ilayk. Wal asr. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu as-salihat. Wa tawasaw bil-haqq. Wa tawasaw bis-sabr. Wassalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Aşkınla arasında yıldızlar kadar zikredin. Uslat şarabından için şu canı aşkla versinler. Ya kalbe şifa